their conditions and pay with a kind of take it or leave it attitude. And of course, all this is totally wrong. We should have workers' councils and consumer councils controlling what is produced, salaries and so forth, but we don't. And so we have this system permitting. So the question is, if we are about to hand over billions and billions of pounds in loans and grants and so forth and bailouts to these companies, should we be attaching strings and conditions to those bailouts? Well, the answer overwhelmingly is yes. Yes, we should. We should not be giving Richard Branson billions of pounds when he's a billionaire, when he's worth about £4 billion, when he's asked staff to take 8 weeks off work, when he could afford to pay them all, the 8,500 staff, he could afford to pay them all £500 a week, which would amount over 8 weeks to around 34 million, which would be less than 1% of his wealth. He could afford to do that, but he won't do that. He wants me and you to do that. He wants the British taxpayer to bail them out when he's got billions of pounds and when his company has probably paid millions and millions to shareholders in shareholder dividends, even though the workers have generated the profit. This is the sick system that we live in, and which is why it will only be changed when there are structural changes in the legal system and, of course, in the structure of companies, which will permit workplace ownership and democracy. It's the only answer to stop this disgusting system. The strings that we should attach are these. All companies taking any money should have to give shares to the government. The government or the public should own shares which will give the government control, voting rights, shareholder voting rights, and it will give them dividends in future profits. That will, to a small degree, begin to democratise these companies. Secondly, we also need to give employees ownership of these companies. We should set up employee ownership schemes where any company that's given money should have to set up all their employees with shares that will allow them to vote on the conditions and the salaries and so forth. Also, we should set any firm that wants money should have to agree to a pay ratio of, say, 1:5 or 1:10 between the lowest worker and the highest earner. There should be no such thing as a worker at the bottom who's doing productive, useful work for the company, but under the laws of capitalism is paid a very small salary. And the top highest coordinator and owner, ultimately a company director is a coordinator. They do a small amount of coordination and strategic leadership for the company, but the other tasks that are done are just as important, and yet the system rewards that coordinator with a massive windfall, possibly 100 to 200 times the amount of the lowest worker. Well, that ratio should be legally ended, and it should be maximum of, say, 1:10 or maybe 1:15, but I don't agree with that. I think it should be something like 1:5 really, the lowest paid worker. Now that would do massive things. That would raise the salary for everyone at the bottom. because the people at the top are not going to tolerate earning only a few times what the lowest paid worker earns. Also, workers or works councils, workers should be elected to the boards of companies. All this is an effort to democratise the company so that we don't have situations where workers are living paycheck to paycheck under extreme stress in a gig economy. All these measures now, where companies will be on their arse because of the coronavirus pandemic, now is the time to change the law, and now is the time to restructure these companies, because ultimately a lot of these companies are not going to be functioning without public money. So where we give public money, we should take public control and employee control. These measures would be an attempt to improve the social value and fairness and equality within companies, because clearly the market will not do that naturally under the current system, where companies have to generate a profit for shareholders and where there are no democratic structures set up within companies. And so you get this completely unfair distribution of wages and, dividends and so forth, and you have a complete lack of voting rights for the workers, because when ultimately the workers are the ones that generate the profit. And there are other videos that are produced that explain why this is a complete immorality, but I will be producing more to discuss. But now is the time to implement these measures, because companies are going to be begging for money.